welcome back to another episode of Beating Alpha. This is episode 114, and we have a very special guest on. His name is Steve Rozenberg. So a little bit of background of his. Of course, I'm not going to be able to read through all the accomplishments that he accomplished throughout all these years, but a little bit about him. He's an international airline pilot who turned investor after the shock of 9/11 made him realize that the secure job was anything but that. So by taking control of his destiny, he's now the face of education for Mynd Property Management, where he enlightens investors about the benefits of small residential investing while still flying all over the world. So another thing to mention, after years of failures, successes, guidance, mentorship, he and his longtime business partner, Pete Neubig, created Empire Industries LLC, the best property management company in Texas, winning the B award 3 years in a row. And of course, there's a lot of different things that we can, cover here in the bio. But of course, the full bio is going to be in the description section. So make sure to read through the entire thing. But it's very impressive. But of course, we're going to cover everything that's included here. So, but first of all, Steve, I want to say a big thank you for being today on the show.
My pleasure. I appreciate you having me on today.
Thank you. So, okay, so let's dive in because because I said before the interview started, we need to find out more about your background by being international airline pilot. I mean, I don't get a lot of people in the show who, are you still active in it or you kind of retired from that?
Still I still fly. Yeah.
Okay, so that's where the kind of still flying all over the world part. And of course, it's kind of a free, well, it's not free, you're still getting paid to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's awesome. So can you tell your background? How did you get involved with become a part of the airline pilot? I mean, how did you transition into that?
Sure. Yeah. So, as a kid growing up, all I ever wanted to do was to be an airline pilot. Didn't want to do anything else. Didn't know about anything else. I studied for it. At the age of 25, I got hired with a major airline, which is about 10 years younger than the national average. National's 35. I was 25. And I had the best job in the world. I loved it, loved everything about it. My first position, the airline I was working with had a base in Guam out in the South Pacific. So I was based in Guam, flying all over Southeast Asia, Australia, the South Pacific Islands, had a great time. And it was the best job in the world up until a certain day. And that day, as we all know, was September 11th, 2001. So up until September 10th, I did have the best job in the world. And in my view, it was the most safe and most secure job. We all know the tragedy that happened on 9/11. And on September 13th, I realized that my safe, secure job was not very safe and it was not secure because I was given a furlough notice and basically saying, thanks for playing, but we don't think we need you. We're doing some downsizing and you're part of it. And, it was very, very humbling, when all you know how to do and all you've ever done your whole life is one job, one specialized field. And now there's about 50,000 other airline pilots about to be furloughed on the street from all the airlines. Airlines are going out of business. They're going into bankruptcy. They're abrogating contracts. It was a big knee-jerk reaction. And I'm sitting there realizing I'm not qualified to do anything else. I was looking in the WAN ads, and I couldn't even get a job driving a truck because I didn't have a license. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is not how it's supposed to be. Like, I went to school to be an airline pilot. I had a safe, secure job. Like the 9/11 tragedy, I didn't have anything to do with it, but now I'm the one who's going to get the repercussions. And so what I realized was that I needed to really understand the way business works and the dynamics of safe and secure and what that actually meant. And because I was so specialized, I was very, very limited. And honestly, I'm probably not the best pilot in the world. So there was other pilots who probably could do a better job than I could. So I probably wouldn't have been first pick for a new job. And so what I started doing is I started, again, and it's for anyone that's watching, if they've ever had this happen to them, it's a very humbling position that all you've ever wanted to do is now just getting ripped away from you within 72 hours. We had 9/11, we had everything going on. Next thing you know, I'm going to be one of the people that's just pushed out on the street because of it, thinking like, this cannot be real. Like this has got to be, this has to be wrong. And of course it wasn't wrong. And so I started just understanding, what do people do that are trying to build wealth? Like what is it that other people do? And it kept resonating back to real estate. And so I started learning more about it. I started reading books, and I was very intrigued by it. We all know people that own rentals, or you've heard of people, but I didn't know any dynamics of it. But now I feel like I'm behind the curve because the clock is ticking. And so I needed to figure out what I was going to do before I did lose my job. And I started reading a book a week on real estate. I read everything that I could. I went to every free networking event, meetup, anything you could ask for, I was at, because I just wanted to consume it. I was like a sponge. And what ended up happening was I never actually lost my job. I came within 30 numbers of the bottom of a 6,000 pilot seniority list, which I'm never going to complain, because it's always better when you have a paycheck than when you don't. But I almost would have rather have known when it was coming than always waiting for the next thing to happen. So it was like after 9/11, if you remember, we had the SARS, then we had the foot and mouth disease going on, then we had H1N1, then we had the global recession. So it was I kept waiting oh, this is, I'm going to get the letter. I'm going to get, so if I would have known it was coming, I could have taken it head on. So I'm never going to complain because I never lost my job, but it made me realize how inconsequential I am and how much of a small cog I am in a very, very big wheel. And I'm just a number. And now I love what I do. I 787 for a commercial airline now. So I love it. I fly all over the world, but I also know that it is a task and it's a skill set that I have that can be erased at the next swipe of a downsizing. And so that's how I got into real estate. I started wholesaling properties. I started flipping them. I bought apartment complexes, bought rental properties. And that kind of is how I ventured into property management from that story.
Got it. So a couple of questions that comes to my mind. First of all, how many flight hours do you have?
I probably have about, we don't really track our hours much. They do it for us at the company, but I'm going to say I probably have about 25,000 hours, I would say.
Here you go.
I'm certified in a Boeing 727, 737, 757, 767, Boeing 777, and a Boeing 787. So I'm type certified in all of those.
So what you said about, there's other better pilots, and maybe I'm not that, good of a pilot, that kind of, forget about it. Again, 25, there's a lot of hours that you put in. And how many years of experience do you have by doing that, just combined?
I started flying in 1990. I took my first flying lesson in 1992. I got hired with TWA in 1995. And then I got hired with Continental Airlines in 1998. So I've been flying commercially since 1995.
Wow, that's a very long time. I'm sure there's some people who are watching and maybe then they wasn't born at that time when you started, working for them.
Yeah.
So that's crazy.
It's interesting, because I get a lot of people, I as you said, I created a property management company. And the reason we created a property management company is because we were so horrible at buying our single family houses that we bought so many bad deals. And I'm talking in the 30 to 40 range of properties. We were so bad at it that we couldn't get out of them. And so we made a lot of mistakes. And because of that, we ended up, nobody would manage the properties for us. So we actually had to create our own management company just to manage our own properties. And then that's when we actually started understanding business. And because of that, we actually created, we were getting coached by a business coach from day one. And we took that company, we scaled it to about 1,000 properties, operating in 3 different cities. And we had about 26 employees in 3 different countries, as well as the US. And we recently sold that business last year to a larger company. But that's all while I was still being a pilot. So when people tell me they're busy, they're not busy. They just choose to be lazy, in my opinion, because you make a choice every day that you wake up. You just choose not to be successful.
Yeah. Okay, so cool. Everybody tries to run away from the fun stuff. I just want to talk about airplanes and the way you work,
Yeah.
but that's fine. You know, let's talk some business. But first of all, I want to ask you a question because I think it could be your answer could be very valuable for the people during these times, because the situation that you've been in, and you know 9/11 during that time, that was kind of similar. Of course, there was kind of on a smaller scale, still very bad situation. But now the global pandemic is global thing. So, and a lot of people are facing the same kind of problem when they're very uncertain what's going to happen with their job. So can you give them advice, like, how do you, because again, you said you just have this one skill, like you were a pilot and that's what you're great at. But how do you transition from something that you're uncertain if you're going to have that to something different? Like, is there some steps that people can do that?
Yeah, it's one word. It's called action. So, you know, it's interesting. A lot of times we will talk ourselves out of why we can't do something without even knowing if we can or cannot. And I think the biggest challenge we have is the negative self-talk that goes through our head, or the people that are surrounding us telling us why we should not do something when they've never done it themselves. And so I'm a big believer. You know, as kids, we can do whatever, you know, our parents tell us you can do whatever you want to do. You want to be an astronaut, you want to be an Olympic athlete, work hard, you can do it, right?
Yeah.
And at some point, as we get older, we go from being told we can do whatever we want to do to saying, I'm going to go start my own business. I'm going to go out on my own. And what do people tell you? Oh, that's stupid. You'll lose money. Don't do it.
And
So at what point?
Why do you think that happens?
I think I think what happens is I don't know when it happens, because I want to know when is that actual transition. But I think why it happens is what people are saying is they can't do it. And they really, even though people want to see other people successful, they really don't want to see them more successful than themselves. So they're saying, if I have a shitty job and I'm doing a 9 to 5 and I'm clinging to what I have, you should also. Like, you shouldn't be better than me. And so if you, let's say you go out and you do your own thing and you start your own real estate company and you're successful, that is now self-reflection on me saying, maybe I should be doing something too. Maybe I should not be so lazy. It's much easier to say, no, don't do it. You know, it's like the crab mentality, right? It's easier to pull a crab back into the bucket, one crab to pull everyone out. So what it means is you're hanging around with the wrong people is what it means. And at the time, you know, people do what they have to do, not what they should do, right? So if you should lose weight, you should, and all of a sudden you find out maybe you have diabetes, you're morbidly obese. Now all of a sudden you're going, I have to lose weight. Same thing with smoking. Same thing with your bank account, right? All of a sudden your bank account says 0. Now you realize I have to do something different. So a lot of times, like for me, I didn't understand a lot of this or how the mind thinks. I just wanted to be a pilot, and I was a pilot. All of a sudden, that turned into I have to do something else because I am not going to have more revenue coming in. So my should became a must at alarming rate. And so I think people that need to do something, they need to realize that they need to do it before that should becomes a must. And the only way that you can do that is by proper planning. And so going back to your original question, the biggest challenge I see entrepreneurs when they get in real estate, and I coach a lot of people, I mentor people and help them out, is they be busy. And they don't understand why they're busy, meaning they don't create an end goal or a destination. And so when I ask someone, why do you want to get into real estate? And they don't have an answer to me, I tell them, I can't help you until you can define what it is that you want and what you want it to represent. Because whether it's a house or whether it's $10,000 a month or $100 million in assets, it's not the money, it's what that money is giving you. It's the perception of the safety and security of what that asset or revenue or whatever it is. So until, you know, everybody has a different goal and a different end destination in life, and we all have different freeways of how we're going to reach that end destination. I can't give you directions on a freeway if you don't know where you're going, right? Just like you ask directions, you stop and ask someone directions, the first thing they're going to ask you is, where are you going? If you can't tell them where you're going, then they can't give you proper directions. And so going back to your original question, I just think that people need to really think about why they're getting involved in real estate and what they want their life to look like as a result. And really that's the harder part. Just getting a deal. Look, anybody can get a deal, right? It's easy. I know personally hundreds of people that have bought deals and run them right into the ground because it was a wrong strategy, or they didn't know what they were doing, or they got all these properties and it just took them further away from the goal because they didn't know what the goal actually was. And once they realized it, they're like, these aren't even the right type of properties I own. And you're like, yeah, I should have thought about that before you bought them all. So that, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of my answer, is create the goal first.
Got it. So have the strong why and have a sense of direction, which for you is kind of being a pilot for you is kind of obvious thing, right? You need to have a direction when you're flying, and you need to have a clear destination where you're going to go. So that is awesome. Like, one thing that I wanted to talk about is, like during these times, there is a lot of people who are brand new in the industry. They want to get involved with real estate business. They want to start a real estate business. But in your personal journey, rather than starting a real estate business, you started a property management company. So can you tell why you have decided to do that instead of investing in real estate?
Well, actually, I did. The property management company was actually a derivative of my properties.
Okay.
Because I bought so many bad properties. So I was a perfect example of what not to do, right? I was buying these low income properties because they were great cash flow properties, right? On paper, they were great, right? These were properties that you'd buy for $40,000, $50,000 here in Houston, Texas. They would rent for $900 a month, cash flowing at $300 to $500 a month, and your return on your investment, because it was such a low acquisition, was astronomically high. But what they don't tell you is that they're very heavy in maintenance, very high tenant turnover, very time intensive. So I bought these properties thinking like, oh, I'll buy these properties, and when I retire, I'll have all this assets and they'll be worth all this money. Well, these types of properties are essentially worth the same amount as when I had owned them back 20 years ago. So they're cash flow properties. They're not appreciation properties. And so one of the mistakes that I made when I purchased these properties is nobody ever asked me, why are you buying these? Because if somebody would have asked me that question, I would have said, well, I want to have properties when I retire because I'm an airline pilot. I don't really need the money right now. Now, everybody likes the money, but that's more of our ego, right? I've got a job. I don't need the cash. I don't need $300 or $400 a month, right? It's nice, but it's not the reason I'm doing it. I was doing it to have a safe, secure retirement and assets that grew with appreciation. But these properties were not those properties. And if somebody would have said, these properties are not going to get you to that goal, I would have maybe thought about before I bought 35 or 40 of them to realize now I have a big problem on my hands. And when I owned these properties, nobody would manage them. They were like, we don't want these deals. These are problem properties. We don't want them. So now I was stuck with these properties trying to figure out what am I going to do with them? And that's why we created the management companies, because nobody would take them. And that kind of, now, with that being said, had I never made those mistakes and made those failures, I would have never have created a multi-million-dollar company and sold it. So the lessons I learned were great, but it was not intentional. I could tell you that. I mean, it was definitely not the plan.
Got it. So talking about the deals itself, can you give some tips for the people who are looking to get involved with the single family, residential properties, like kind of do's and don'ts, on acquiring some deals? Maybe it's some mistakes that you did.
I know a lot of the don'ts because I did a lot of them. But actually, I wrote a book. Actually, I published a book that I did specifically on my story. So if you want, you can go to my website or something, you can see it. But anyways, a lot of, here's the thing. Number one, buying real estate is 4 walls and a roof. That's it. It's not that is not going to guarantee your success. Mm-hmm. The business model is what is going to tell you if it's going to be successful based on what your determination of success is, meaning, is it getting you to your goal, right? Number one. The numbers are what is actually dictating the story, nothing else. So a lot of times we will get an emotional attachment or involvement in a property because we so badly want it to be successful, but there's no guarantee that it will be successful. We want it to be. And what ends up happening is we talk ourselves into a deal because we have spent some time or energy or we desire it. And now we're explaining to ourselves or whomever, our business partner, significant other, that this is a good deal. But if the numbers are telling you something different, you have to respect the numbers because the numbers are telling you a story. It is the report card. The 4 walls and a roof. I had a lot of properties, these 35, 40 houses that I owned, that I was losing money on, right? I sold these properties losing money. And a couple of them, I actually had to bring money to closing, which tells you how bad I must have sucked at this, because the properties were only about 40,000 properties. And one of them I had to bring like 10 grand to closing, just to give you an idea. And the person who bought them was able to actually make money with them. So when I would sit back and I would look at that, I would say, why is it this person was making money with the same four walls and the roof that I could not? He had a different business model. He had a better business model based on that type. I didn't want to be hands-on. I didn't want to deal with that type of tenant where you're always dealing with late payments and being there all the time and having a crew to run the maintenance. I wanted to be as hands-off as I could. Wrong strategy for that type of business model. So my answer to you is number one, make sure that the numbers are dictating the deal. Do not ever get emotional, and make sure you have the right strategy for the type of property you're buying to get you to that goal.
Okay. So any tips, because I'm sure you have a lot of people, that come to you asking the questions, probably the question that I'm going to ask you. And a lot of people are complaining about that it's very hard to find good deals during these market conditions, because again, the capital is there, but maybe it's harder to source deals. So maybe you can, share a few strategies. Maybe you got some creative ones for people on how they can find the good deals.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I do hear people telling me that, and I'll ask them, how many deals have you looked at? And they'll say a lot. I go, what is a lot? Give me a number. 500? Maybe not 500. Well, okay, well, how many? Well, it turns out by the time we're done, they've looked at like 5 deals. I'm like, okay, well, until you've looked at 500 deals, don't tell me there's not a lot of deals, because that's just the story you're telling yourself, because the deal is not falling in your lap, right? Fish are not going to jump out of the water and into your boat, right? So it's the same thing. It's like, until you have assessed 500 deals, don't tell me there's not deals. I see deals all the time, whether it's mobile homes, multifamily, single family, whatever the case may be, the deals are there. You are probably, the challenge a lot of new people have is they're everywhere. They have this shotgun approach. They want to do everything, which means they're going to suck at everything. They're not going to be good at it. You've got to be focused on one tactic, one strategy, one goal to know where you're going and be as deep as an oil well. The problem is most investors are trying to do too much, and they're like the depth of a can of tuna. So there's no depth to them. And that's where the mistakes happen. I think that if they were focused and they knew, I need a property, and I'll give you my parameters that I use, but when non-negotiables and they want a certain cash on cash return, maybe a certain equity capture, maybe a certain appreciation rate. And so a lot of times they look at a deal comes across and they're like, oh, a condo, is this a good deal or a bad deal? Well, it doesn't make cash flow, it's a bad deal. Well, that is one piece of a very large puzzle. So one thing that I teach people is that there are 5 pieces that they need to think about when they are purchasing a property. Now, I'll tell you the 5, and there's no significance of one over the other. For me, there is, because I have a different maybe set of goals. Everybody has a different set. So the first parameter is cash flow. Cash flow is obviously what you're renting it for minus your debt servicing, meaning all your bills. And that's the delta, which is the difference between the two. So that's cash flow. Now, many people, when I talk to newer investors and they tell me that that's not a good deal, they're basing everything on that number. But there's 4 more pieces to the puzzle that they're not thinking about, right? So I'll explain to them. I say, if I can explain to you why this may be a good deal, you owe me a beer. And so they're like, okay, you're on. So I go, okay, so we have cash flow. I'm not saying it's important or not important. It's just one piece of the puzzle, right? It's just a piece. The next piece is called equity capture. Equity capture is the difference of what the market value is for the property to what the acquisition cost is. And the difference of the two is the equity that you capture. Now, when I say capturing equity, you are not actually, it's not going into your pocket. It's not going into Hip National Bank, but if you had time, you could turn around and resell that property because maybe this person has some sort of motivation, or you're able to purchase the property, do some repairs, and make the after repair value higher, but you are capturing that equity. Equity capture, again, it's not a reason to buy or not to buy, but it is a factor, okay? And by the way, I don't know of any other type of investment asset class that I could sign a piece of paper for a house that's worth 150, buy it for 120, and make $30,000 of unrealized capital gain by signing a couple pieces of paper. I don't know of any. So there's equity capture, right? So those are the 2. The next one is when you buy a property, you're probably going to get a loan on the property, right? Or you're going to get some sort of lending financing, and you're going to have a loan payment every month. But if the property's rented, who pays that loan back? The tenant. That's called debt pay down. So essentially, you're going to own a property. Let's just do easy math and say you're going to own it for 30 years. You're going to own that property for 30 years, and you're going to have somebody pay down that mortgage to you to zero. So I'm going to have an asset that I bought for 120. It was worth 150. So I got 30,000 in unrealized capital gain there. And someone else is going to pay that 120 off for me on in the form of debt pay down. Again, debt pay down is another one. Debt pay down will happen no matter what, because unless you really suck as a landlord and you never have it rented, there's always going to be a tenant in, and that's going to be paying down the mortgage. Okay. The next thing is going to be depreciation. So the IRS gives you be able to depreciate an asset, single family. I'm not a CPA and I'm not giving advice, but it's about 27.5 years that they say at the end of 27.5 years, that property will be depreciated to a value of zero, and you can offset your losses. Again, that's part of the equation. The last piece of the puzzle is the one that I put most of my thought into, is appreciation. Properties on the East Coast and West Coast of the United States will double every 7 to 9 years. And in the Midwest, it's every 12 to 15 years. Now, I'm not talking about the land. You're depreciating. I'm sorry, the structure is depreciating over 27.5, but the land is appreciating. But for easy math, let's just say the house is worth 150. Let's say you own it for 30 years. It's going to double to 300, and then it's going to double again to 600. Okay. Now, I know there's probably people watching saying, well, it's not going to be 600. So let's just say 500 for easy math to make everyone happy. 500,000. If I owned a house today in Houston, Texas, in 30 years from now, I don't think it's unrealistic to say that house would be worth 500,000. Okay. I now have an asset that I bought for 120. Somebody paid down my debt to zero. It is now worth $500,000. As soon as I got my down payment back, my monthly return is infinite. I've depreciated the asset, right? Now, what the piece of the puzzle that a lot of people forget is when you're buying a property, you're basing the number today. So let's say the property was worth $1,500 a month in rent. Let's say the 1% rule, you bought it is worth $150. You rented it for $1,500. Let's just say you made $150 a month cash flow. But what happens when that property starts going up in value? 180, 200, 250. You're not refinancing the loan. So now you have an asset worth 500,000. Let's just say you're renting it for 3,500 a month, right? It's not quite 1%. Let's say it's 0.9%. So now I have an asset that's worth $500,000 that I can pull money out tax-free if I want to. I'm getting $3,500 a month tax-free, and I'm getting it's all cash flow, and my return is infinite. The point here that I'm trying to make is you have 5 pieces of the puzzle. People make a today decision on a future goal. My question to them is, why are you buying this property? Are you buying it because you need the cash flow right now today? If the answer is no, I need it for when I retire, what do you care what it's doing today? It's irrelevant, even if it's negative. There are negative geared cash flow properties. You could buy a property in San Francisco. You could lose $300, $400 a month every month. And when you sell it, maybe you make $1 million. And the 30,000 that you lost during the time that you owned it is wiped out with the $1 million of profit that you made. So are you really losing money, or is that just the perception you tell yourself? And so my point is be very careful the story you tell yourself when you're looking at a piece of real estate, because you've got to make sure you're looking at the bigger picture. And your job, when you own real estate, you own a business and you are the CEO of that business. And your job is to make CEO decisions and not just look at, I'm only making $200 a month, I'm not making any money. That is the short-sighted landlord version, not the investor version. And that's what I try to teach people, the importance of looking at multiple facets of real estate.
Got it. And I love the fact, again, those 5 pieces of a puzzle gives us a great picture to kind of understand the way you can acquire deals. And I love the fact, an example that you gave about buying a deal in San Francisco and losing maybe $3,000, but overall making, $1 million. And that's kind of a very interesting approach that I think a lot of people should be aware of. So thanks for just pointing this out for people. It's super
and I think that, and again, I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I think it's important to understand What are all the variables I'm playing with? And so again, when I'm looking at a deal, I may say like, okay, like I tell patient and debt pay down is going to happen no matter what. So let's take those out, right? That's going to happen. So now you have cash flow, you have equity capture. Of those three, which one is the most important to you? And they go, well, I really want it for when I retire. Okay, so appreciation is the most important. So when you're looking at deals, I would be focusing on saying, okay, what area has the highest appreciation rate? And then I would try to come up with two. You're not going to get all of them. I would say I have one non-negotiable and a second one that I would like. So I say, okay, I want something that's appreciating in value, and I would like to capture at least 5% equity. Okay, so now when you're looking at a deal, how do you know it's a good deal? Well, what are the appreciation rates? And you want at least 5% equity capture. Now you're running the deal based on numbers, not on, well, it's only $200 a month. That's not a good cash on cash return. I could care less if I'm making 100 or losing 100. I'm looking at big picture long term. I'm looking at all pieces of the puzzle. I'd rather lose $100 a month and make a huge appreciation play, because what people don't realize is that cash flow will never, ever, ever beat appreciation. It's the compound effect of math, right? You can never beat appreciation if you buy it correctly and you're buying it based on that goal.
Got it. And thanks for speaking on the acquisitions part. One thing that I want to talk about also, of course, and we have to cover it because you created the company. So the property management piece, again, maybe you can speak of from, betting a property management, like how do people know when they're going to hire, a right property management? Can you give some tips on that?
Absolutely. And I actually, if on my website, I actually have a document that they can get about the top 20 or 22 questions you should ask a property management company. Because here's the thing you got to remember. I don't care if it's a property management company, a contractor, a realtor, I don't care. These people are part of your team, okay? And so you have to make sure that whoever you bring onto your team, you need to make sure that, is this person in line with what my goals are? Now, you may say, I don't know my goals. Well, then you need to slow it down and find your goals, right? We already discussed that. But you need to have that conversation with the management company of saying, okay, this is where I'm going. This is my goals. Can you help me get there? If you can't even have that conversation with someone that's going to be your partner, because the property management side is the most important aspect of you creating wealth. You can buy the best deal in the world. You can do all of these things. If they can't keep a tenant in and they keep running it into the ground, you will be the one that goes out of business, not them. So you want to make sure, and the way you do that is you've got to ask them questions, and sometimes they're hard questions. I would want to know, what is your eviction rate? What is your occupancy rate? What is your average days on market? What does it cost for you to do a make ready on my property? How many days does it take for you to do a make ready on my property, right? These are things like, what is the average rent you collect? If they say we manage properties that are $300 a month and you have a $3,000 a month rental, they may not be aligned with the type of customer service that you want for your clients, for your tenants. So and again, I've got this list. People can go to my website and they can get it there. But I just think it's very, very important that people realize that there are a lot of questions on all of these people. And I recommend you have what's called an expectation meeting. And this is with everyone. And an expectation meeting is kind of that no shit conversation where you say, listen, this is me and this is where I'm going. And this is how I think that you can help me get there. Do you agree? Can you do this role? And am I expecting something different? Because they may say, yeah, we don't do any of that. The biggest challenge is a lot of people, especially with a property management company, that's normally the afterthought is what I've learned. Like people say like, I'll try it myself or I'll figure that out later. Well, that's like trying to pack your parachute while you're in the air jumping. It just doesn't work, right? The odds of you being successful are slim to none. The odds of you finding a good property management company when you need one after the fact is probably not the time to be interviewing them. I suggest before you ever purchase a property, you should have these interviews with all these people. This is what I'm doing. This is my goal. This is my strategy. Does this align with you? If they say yes, now you know, okay, this is the cost basis I can put in, and I can factor that into my acquisition. I can put that in the numbers. I know they're a part of my team. So when I'm looking at a deal, I can bring them into the conversation. Hey, do you agree with these rents? Does this make sense? That kind of stuff. If they're like, oh, we don't rent in that area, I'd want to know why. Like, why don't you rent in that area? And so these are the things that you should be asking when they're on your team. Now, the biggest challenge I've seen with people is they want to go with the cheapest person. Well, my question to them is, if you were driving down the street and you saw a guy on the corner that said, hey, I'm a doctor and I'm giving 50% off surgeries today, would you go in and get a surgery from that guy? Probably not, right? Now, I will say that having someone manage your property is not the same as somebody cutting you open and doing surgery on you. It's not life and death, but it's very similar to life and death of your finances, because if they handle it wrong, they can make you go bankrupt and they can ruin everything that you've been built, or they can get you sued. So going with the cheapest person just because they're the cheapest or because they answered the phone first, to me, is not a logical reason to pick that person as your business partner to get you to where you want to go.
Got it. I got it. Again, some great advices here. So thank you again for sharing those. I appreciate it. One thing again that I wanted to ask you, because I know you personally fix and flips hundreds of single family residential properties, Houston metro area. So, and you mentioned before we started recording this interview that you're kind of looking in different asset classes when it comes to the real estate. So would you do you recommend new people when they come to you asking questions, a particular real estate, asset class to be involved right now during this time? And of course, it's a 16th of October, if you're watching this episode. So do you recommend a particular asset class to kind of get people focused on at this current time?
You know what? I recommend whatever is aligned with their goals. And so I would, again, it's hard. I can't tell someone to go run a marathon if they've never run around the track once. Makes sense. I'm very careful giving advice only because it's only as good as the person that is prepared for it, right? So I don't, what a good deal is for me. I tell them, give me your numbers. What are the data? What numbers are you looking for? What's the end result you want? If they don't know that, then I'm going to say you're not prepared to go out there. Now, I will tell you that I firmly believe that within the next probably between now and let's say 12 to 18 months, this time frame, there will be more wealth created in real estate than in the last decade. There will be a lot of people that lose their properties because they purchased them wrong. Real estate goes in cycles. It normally goes in about a 7-year cycle, right? And whatever you want to call it, right? So we'll just go back to 9/11, right? After 9/11, about 7 years, we had the 2008 recession. Then in about 2014, which is about 6 years, we had oil prices at $130 a barrel. Now we're about 7 years later, and now we have COVID. So you can call it what you want. You can name it any anomaly and unprecedented. These are just cyclical market corrections that have been happening. If you do a deep dive in the history of anything, everything runs in cycles. Real estate is no different. And it goes in 7-year cycles. Now, nobody would have guessed something like this would have caused this, but nobody would have guessed 9/11 either, right? It's just, there are cycles in their market corrections. And when the market corrects, it has a way of cleaning out the stupid people that bought wrong. And so that's what it's going to do. It's going to clean out the people who made bad purchases. And I'm a firm believer, because I know what I'm doing. Right now, I'm just sitting back and waiting. So I'm just waiting for the deals to come. And when they come, like right now, right, we in this, like you said, as we're recording this, real estate is very, frenzied, right? Everyone's buying. They can't believe the prices. It's going up. It's pushing up. This is very similar to what was going on in 2006 and 2007. This is very, very similar if you look at the numbers, right? And it reminds me of Disneyland at the grand finale of the fireworks before it goes dark, right? It's just going crazy right now, but it will go dark. And when it goes dark, that's kind of when people put on their night vision goggles and they start going hunting for the deals that they want to hunt. And so people like me are just waiting. We're just waiting. So I think going back to your question, I think that, I think it could be a good time if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, makes sense. So Steve is sitting right now with his night goggles on, and he's just observing for some deals. That's awesome. I love the way you put it out there. That's really cool. So again, talking about the stupid people, as you mentioned, like what does make, like, is there some key traits when you come across somebody and you talk with them and they talking about the goals for real estate investing, what type of business they want to have, and you kind of look at them and something is kind of off and maybe they're not going to be pursuing, they will not achieve those particular goals because they lack something. So like throughout your personal experience, coaching and helping real estate investors to build their business, have you seen like some particular real estate like skills and traits that a successful real estate investor should have?
Yeah. Plain and simple, it's a non-emotional mathematical equation. Owning real estate is just math. Whenever I start hearing someone talking about how they feel, what they think, and they're trying to justify their position, that to me is a red flag popping off in my head. When someone's giving me numbers and they're saying, I bought it for X, it's doing this, our predictions are this, this, and this, and they're telling me that this is their exit strategy, then they have this other exit strategy, and they're very matter of fact, I know that they're running it as a business. When someone's telling me about how they feel and they're telling me how beautiful the place is and how much I'm going to love it, and they're trying to convince me that they did something right, I know the clock is ticking on them. So again, my advice is, remember, it is mathematics. So think about this. A lot of people that are probably watching this, they probably, I'm guessing, will only want to purchase a property in their area where they live. Okay. And let's say their strategy, let's say their goal is to have properties that are giving them $300 a month cash flow, $150,000 type properties, $300 a month in cash flow, very basic situation. And they want to pay those off in 20 years and have all the cash flow coming in. But let's say they live in San Francisco, and in the Bay Area of San Francisco, that doesn't work, right? They can't do that. So I tell them, okay, maybe your goals are right, but maybe your strategy is wrong, meaning the strategy of what you're doing in San Francisco doesn't work. So now you got to go out of state or out of market, and you got to start finding those types of properties out of your area. I'm in Houston. A lot of people come to me because they want to buy properties in Houston, Texas. And a lot of people tell me how, oh, I want to be close. I want to be close to this property. I want to be able to see it, or I want to come down. And I'll ask them, like, why do you feel that you need to be close to the property? And their answer is, well, I own it, so I should be able to see it. It's my property. I want to touch it, smell it. I want to roll around in the grass or whatever they want to do. And I'm like, okay, so are you an inspector? No. Are you an appraiser? No. Are you going to self-manage the property? No. So what value do you have to come look at four walls and a roof? What value is there? And of course they, well, I'm spending a lot of money. I want to see it, which is a valid concern, but it's not logical. So my answer to them is, my rebuttal question, I should say, is, do they own any stocks? Most of them do. Give me the name of a stock that you own. Chase Bank. Okay. Do you go to the Chase building? Do you only own stock in your neighborhood, or do you own stock wherever the numbers make sense?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the numbers make sense. Okay. So before you bought Chase, did you actually go into the headquarters and stick your head in the building, or directors, and make sure everything was cool before you bought your 30 shares? Well, no, that's ridiculous. But yet that's exactly what you're just telling me you're going to do with this. It's just a different asset class. And so my point is don't get wrapped around the axle of a different asset class. The more that you think you need to be involved, the less you're treating it like a business, and you're going to treat it like a hobby, or you're going to treat it wrong, because what makes you think you're qualified to inspect a house? Mm-hmm. I'd rather pay someone to go there and give me a report than go there and do it myself. Because the biggest challenge is newer investors is we don't put a value on our time, right? Mm-hmm. We think like, oh, I should go do this, but they don't really know that they should. It's like them thinking they should go lay tile or them trash out a house. They just don't put the value on their time. So they think, well, I guess this is what I should be doing because that's what you do. But that's wrong. That's because they're thinking like a landlord, not like an investor. Investors don't do that. Investors have teams of people doing that, and they value and protect their time. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
I think it did. I think it did more than that. So definitely, thank you for sharing that. Again, one thing that I still want to discuss, because I'm just looking at the website, and I mean, you have a lot of different things as far like 32 products, well, products kind of information when it comes to learning the tricks and trades about real estate investing, which of course you can go and find at steverozenberg.com /store. I mean, a lot of great things. But one thing that I wanted to ask you, and it's kind of one thing that people don't like, is sales. I mean, can you talk about that? How that is a key? Is that important key role in a real estate, professional world, or that's kind of, it doesn't matter?
And when you say sales, them being able to sell?
Just in general, and know how to sell.
Yeah. Well, here's what I've learned. And again, this is just from me owning a business. And there's different personality types, right? So I'm a big believer in what's called disc profiling, where everyone has a different disc profile, personality profile. And everybody, I'm not a sit in the office kind of person, right? That's not my profile. I'm not an accounting person, right? That's just not my makeup, right? I'm a gregarious, outgoing person, like doing podcast shows. This is what I like to do. Could I do those things? Could I do accounting? Yes, I could. Do I like to do them? No, I don't. But at the core, every business that exists, I don't care what they are a sales and marketing business. They are constantly focusing on marketing and sales. So marketing makes the phone ring. Sales answers the phone and closes them, and they become a client. If you are not making that your prime focus, whether it's dealing with tenants, whether it's getting new properties, whether it's dealing with day-to-day issues, that is selling. And either you are selling them or they are selling you. Even if you're going on a date, trying to convince your kids to put their shoes on, there's a sale going on, right? Selling people use that word selling as like being deceitful or doing something. You could swap that out with convincing, conversational, whatever you want to term it. But the reality is yes, knowing how to communicate with people, because communication is vital, because people do business with people, and they do it with people that they like and that they can relate to and have rapport with. That is all a part of communication. And so if I'm going to be a good communicator, communicators make the most money on the planet, by the way. If you are a good communicator, you are able to go and establish rapport with people and communicate with them on multiple levels. So to answer your question, yes, absolutely. You have to learn it. Now, you may not like it because you may be someone who likes running numbers and likes being an operator, and that's fine. But that means you need to hire someone who does. Because if your phone is not ringing and you are not bringing in more business, like I said, whether it's a tenant, contractors, new properties, you're going out of business. You just don't realize it yet until your bank account says zero.
Yeah, exactly. Got it. Thanks. I'm very happy that you talk about sales in the way that you did, because like for me personally, it's very important, and the people that are around me talk about sales all the time. So it's something that everybody should use and learn at least how to do it, at least a little bit, because like one thing like a phone sales is a lost art for sure. Now people are very depending on kind of marketing and just, oh, it's a Facebook ad and it's going to like provide me revenue. Like people should not forget, how to do sales also. So talking about the mastermind that I'm just currently looking at, the think tank mastermind hosted by yourself. I mean, what people should be expecting when they're going to become a part of it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I do it completely for free. I don't charge anything for it. I do it every week. I've been doing it about 3 months, maybe 4 months. I've got about 1,000 people in the group growing, probably because I do a lot of stuff with Bigger Pockets and other things. But I think the biggest reason what I do is I do two things. I help people understand the mindset behind what you have to do. So the biggest challenge I think in real estate is not the tactical of how to buy the deal. It's the mental mindset of who you have to become to buy that deal. Like when you go to bed at night and you lay your head on the pillow, are you thinking correctly, or are you thinking worst case scenario? How do you talk to either your spouse or your business partner when you say, I want to own real estate? How do you tell your wife I'm about to go into debt on this property, and get them to buy into the goal? So I talk a lot about that. And then what I also do, because of my history of owning real estate and management company, I bring in experts. The other day I had a buddy of mine owns a wholesale company, and he talks about the things that you need to look out for when you're buying a wholesale deal. I've got another buddy of mine who's going to be on. He went from having 1,200 unit apartment complexes to now he only owns 35 houses. So most people say they want to buy houses and they want to buy apartments. He went the other way, and he tells you why. Because like everything in life, there is a dark side to everything, but they don't talk about that. I talk about that. So I bring the reality of real estate in. So I just bring people in. I bring in. So I do it every week, and I alternate. 1 week it's me talking about mindset. You know, how effective are you on your day? How are you doing with your day? Are you proactive or reactive? Why do you let people bully your calendar? I talk about real stuff. And so, yeah, it's free. They can go to my website, they can sign up. And like I said, it's like 1,000+ people in a couple months. So I must be doing something right, because they're pushing it on social media and everything for me. And I give my time because, you know, honestly, nobody was here to do that for me when I was learning. And I think the mindset side of real estate is so important. Like I said, you can buy a great deal, but if you're not thinking right, it can ruin you. I know people that have millions of dollars and they're actually worse off mentally than they were when they were broke, because now they're so worried about losing that $1 million. And so just because you bought the property is not going to say like you're home free. And so I think it's very, very important to think about that.
Love it, love it. And again, and again, I love the fact that you're providing this kind of mastermind for free. You know, giving your time away, and you know, putting great superstars, you know, partners of yours, people that you know from different, you know, asset classes. So that's really cool. So I can't encourage enough. Again, join the ranks of the rest of the, you know, people that are involved with the mastermind. And of course, the link is going to be there for that down below. The question, kind of the final question that I have for you, because I've seen there's been on the website, you also a speaker, and I've seen the photo, you're speaking on stage. And again, you're meeting a lot of people through the mastermind, you're being on a podcast just like this one, which I really appreciate you for being today on the show. And I mean, overall, you're just meeting a lot of, you know, people. But the question is, from whatever you're working on, you're a pilot, you're a real estate investor, you're a coach, like, what is the core thing? Like, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind you?
You know, that's a good question. I think I'm an eternal grinder. I am one of those people that, you know, that 9/11 really lit a fire underneath me. And it kind of sparked something inside me. And I didn't realize that I was this entrepreneur that I am. And I really, really enjoy helping and educating. And so my journey in life, if you will, since I sold my company, is I'm doing a lot of mentoring. I'm creating a bunch of video content that's going to be coming out very soon. And I enjoy doing that. So I want to be, you know, my goal is to be the #1 thought leader in the real estate world. And so most people that know me, I've done all the things. I flipped. I've done all that. I don't want to be known for that. I want to be known as the guy who nudges you to think differently and gets you to have a different viewpoint on not only just, you know, when I talk to people, honestly, it could be about any business 101. It could be about life lessons. It's not necessarily real estate. Real estate is just the tool of leverage that we're using. But the things I talk about are they're life things, you know, talking about, you know, what do you do on a daily basis? I get up at 4 a.m. every day to go to the gym. That's what I do, right? I have a pattern. I have triggers. that I do that cause me to, okay, get into the gym mode. You know, what are your triggers? What do you do to get you to flip out of being pissed off to go like, okay, calm down, take a breath, let's reassess, and let's get back in the game. So a lot of the stuff I talk about, I want to be known as the person that just makes you think differently, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you impacted a lot of people today by to help them to think different, because during these times there is a lot of people, you know, they're looking for these top answers. And I love the fact that you just said like 9/11 kind of, you know, put a fire in you, and you kind of find out like who you can be even more, besides being a pilot, which you still are. But you find out there's other things that you want to be part of, like you have this entrepreneur-like spirit in you. So I think you know, these times like with the COVID, you know, again with the right information which you just, you know, provided, and of course there's more in the mastermind. That's why I want all of you who are watching to join that, which is of course free. I'm sure there's a great content in it. But you're going to find out, like, in the toughest times, you can find the strength, and you can find something that could be that you never know existed before. So I love the fact.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and the thing is you're never tested until you have a failure. You don't learn. You'll learn a lot about yourself, and you'll learn a lot about like who you are, not from your wins, but from your losses. And so I tell people, when you want to see someone's true character, when they're failing. See if they're blaming other people or the situation, or if they're taking responsibility for themselves. Like it's not in the highs, it's the deep lows that you will find someone's true character. And I've been there, so I know, trust me. And my business partner and I have been there together, and we really found out a lot about each other, and we created a lot of mutual respect because, you know, we dealt with stuff head on. And like I said, you will learn a lot about someone just by learning how they are in the failure. So, you know, I guess just as parting words, what I would say is, you know, don't be afraid of failing. A lot of people are so afraid to fail, but that is actually where the biggest lessons in life will come from. And I would say that now it's easy to say like, oh, there's a lesson there, right? It's very hard to see a lesson when a tenant rips you off or a contractor doesn't pay, whatever the case may be. But there is a lesson when the emotions settle down and you decide and go, you know what, maybe I should screen my residents better. Maybe I should have some sort of screening process for my contractors before I pay them. So there is a lesson. If you choose to learn it, that's really the key. And so that's what I would say is, don't be afraid to fail. Fail as often as you can, but learn the lesson from it. And sometimes you got to emotionally remove yourself from it and kind of like, okay, is there anything here that I could learn that I won't do next time? And chances are there probably is, if you ask yourself that question.
Yeah, here you go. Here you go. So that's I love it. Love it. So again, thank you enough, Steve, for today, for joining me on the show. I mean, so many great tips, strategies, just, you know, mindset shifts. And I think that's this episode is going to be super great for a lot of people. And that's what I want to ask you guys and girls who are watching this episode. If you pass it along, send it to your friend who always talks about real estate investing, but always, you know, kind of lacks the information, the strategy, never pulls that trigger. I think this episode will provide a lot of value to that person and help that person to go on the path of real estate investing. Again, Steve, really appreciate you being today on the show. It's been a true pleasure to get to know you. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you. And if anybody wants to follow me, I'm on, they can go to Instagram, Rozenberg Steve, or Facebook. And I do have a Facebook group. Again, it's free. But it's just, again, trying to get like-minded people to get. I think that we're a pretty small community in general, real estate as a whole. There's not many of us, believe it or not. So I think it's good that we all kind of get together and try to help each other out as much as we can. And, you know, me when I'm done, and they'll do free stuff and pay it forward.
Here you go. Here you go. So thanks again, Steve. This has been an episode Beating Alpha 114 with Steve Rozenberg. Make sure, again, to pass along this episode, as I said before. Go and check it out. The Mastermind, Steve's website. Go and check out the products that he has. It's awesome. So, Steve, again, thank you for being on the show. Guys and girls, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.